Good evening. I'd like to call the study session North Augusta City Council from Monday, January the 30th, 2023 to order. Welcome. It's good to see everybody. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to our city administrator, Mr. Jim Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have three items for tonight's study session. One, to review the upcoming items for our agenda for the council meeting next Monday. Second item will be department details, as per normal with our directors and senior managers. And lastly, we'll have two focus item areas under Mayor's Matters, first being the Riverside Village update, second being the Public Safety Headquarters update. So with that, I'm going to just go ahead and dive in for the agenda review. And I'll skip right to number 6, which is filed under Old Business for Economic Development, which is ordinance number 2020-18, amending Article 13, Signs of the North Augusta Development Code, Chapter 18, City of North Augusta, South Carolina Code of Ordinances, first reading. And this was tabled almost 2 years ago, actually more than 2 years ago, from July 20th, 2020, at City Council meeting. And so I will defer comments on this to Mr. Tommy Paradise or potentially Kelly, depending on what the council's questions are. But Tommy, if you could come to the podium and give a quick update to the council on why this is back on the agenda.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I received, the pastor reached out to me, wanted to know, okay, what's the path forward? It's been a while. I want to get moving on this sign. And I reached out to the city attorney because I wasn't really sure what the pathway was. We had this on the table, and should this over here be handled before I send him for a variance, or was it okay to send him for a variance? I just really wasn't sure. And Kelly looked into it and said, no, he says, I think council needs to vote it up or down before you send them to the BZA. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Kelly.
Yeah, that's basically correct. And but to go a little further, certain things that council might table could stay there forever, and that would be pretty much if there was an ordinance that was proposed and was voted, was tabled, and there was not a determination any time later to bring it up. My concern with something like this is that this is a citizen who has made an application for some action by the city. Now, this is not one of them that I think creates an automatic approval, but there are some where requests are made, councils to act on it within a certain period of time, and if it is not acted on within a certain period of time, it's deemed to be approved. Now, that's not what we're dealing with here, but we are dealing with a situation that a request was made, it went through the proper procedure, and it came to council, and it's very understandable many times for council to believe that we need to review this a little more. I'm not quite ready to make a decision on this now, but as we say, we're 2 years. The other thing that happens is that, and I have no idea of any nature that there's any thought of litigation based upon the outcome of this, but when you have, like these people, there's an administrative procedure for them to follow to try to get relief, and before they could resort to a court, they have to exhaust their administrative procedure, and this is part of that. So to some extent, and again, I have not even heard any thought that there's any potential of litigation related to this, but you are holding them up from that too.
Got a question, or let me pass this idea. So one of my concerns is a number of concerns, but one is the fact that basically this is a new council, okay? And I was on the planning commission. We voted this down, not as a recommendation to city council, and we can discuss what the reasonings were. I went back and looked at our notes and minutes, and I think when it came to council, I think y'all probably went almost down a rabbit hole and beyond just the Be Ye Holy. It got into a lot of other things. So I guess it was council, tabled. So Tommy, I guess my question is, do you think that they would be open to giving us a little time to maybe relook at this as council? Because, I mean, Jen could not tell you anything about the ordinance and where it is, what it's doing. So in my mind, if I'm being holy, I would not want council to vote on this next week because I don't know, it's been 2.5 years. I don't know if we have the information necessary. So are they wanting it right now, or do you think they'd be open if we would take it off the table? I think we ought to take it time. I mean, Kelly's right, let's get it off the table. I just don't want to get off the table next week and we're not even prepared to vote and we're going to vote it down and then they're really in a mess.
I think I think if it doesn't come off the table the next meeting would be in March, if I understand the council calendar correctly. And so if it came off the calendar for the 6th and it came back in March, I think they would be okay. If it went back to a date uncertain, I think they may have an issue. And it leaves us with which way do we direct them?
Well, I'm just sharing my take. I don't know what y'all are. I mean, it's been 2.5 years. Y'all may be totally familiar with everything, but I know Jen.
I was just going to reiterate that I would probably need more than a week just to kind of get my information involved. But we do have a large council that has been involved, so maybe.
Because see, this was just a text amendment for Be Ye Holy, and the thing about a text amendment is that goes throughout the whole code. And then I think you had at that same time, if I'm not mistaken, there was a church bringing up. So I mean, I think y'all talked about it. There were a lot more issues than just Be Ye Holy. So again, I don't know.
Well, let me say something, because I know Mr. Newsom would be ye holy, a dear, dear friend of mine. And I would say he would, because him and I have talked about this. Matter of fact, I probably pushed him to bring it back up, okay? Because I said, don't let it sit so long. I know he would be glad to take it off the table and us discuss it at length. I mean, he might call me at night and say, what are you talking about, Pat? But he would. But I'm going to remind everybody, North Augusta Middle, which is one of my favorite little schools in this city, when Mr. Newsom came to us and we tabled it, it wasn't 2 weeks later, and Tommy, I don't know if I called you or Libby, North Augusta Middle had an electric sign put up. And I asked, who approved that? And no one could tell me. So I presume the board of Aiken County just figured, hey, we can put these signs up. Let's go. Which that's what we need at the schools, the digital. I agree with that. But Be Ye Holy, I'm telling you, is one block exactly from North Augusta Middle. And that their sign got, and that's what Mr. Newsom is not he is so kind and sweet. I mean, he never gets upset. But him and me both were thinking how, and I even called the principal. I said, who did you go to? She said, I'm telling you, Miss Pat, we don't know how that sign got up.
You know,
and so that's why I told Joe, this needs to come back to us to discuss more. Because to me, we can't let one organization put up and not the other.
Mr. Mayor, if I could address that just a second. Yeah. The sign was put up, and we contacted them and said, hey, what's going on? They came back in and got a variance to the BZA and got a variance.
Is that North Augusta Middle? Aiken County?
Correct.
Public school.
And all of the other signs that they've put up, electronic message centers since then, they've come in and got the variances up front. They got their sign installer got ahead of them.
But part of the issue, and that's Tommy's responsibility to do this for the applicant, because at Libby, initially that would go through the variance. And I think Libby told Be Ye Holy that, hey, I'm not sure how good this is going to work. You might need to look at doing it with a text amendment. So that's how it came to Planning Commission. Okay? So, but then again, what we talked about was, North Augusta Middle School is across from the cleaners. What I'm saying is that's all commercial, but from there up, you got residential. So that was a big issue. So it is the same zone, but it's almost like two separate If you split a line, you have all residential, then you have all commercial on the same road. It's not populated in between except for B.E. Holy.
Yeah, but
so-
there's a house right next door to North Augusta Middle now.
Yeah, right.
mean,
know there's- I know. Trees up there.
I'm just,
Well,
well,
yes.
yeah, a tree.
So,
But I'm just saying, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
so here's the thing. So we can't do anything tonight, but
Right.
I guess my question is, what I'm hearing you, do you think it'd be open if we decide to come off the table next week, and then we could basically, would then have to put it back on the table again until the March? But then that would give us time to be able to discuss.
It still takes a motion to take it off of the table.
Right, if it's-
And so if you don't get a motion next week to take it off of the table,
Oh, it can just stay on the
it's still
table.
there.
Okay. I just want, what I'm saying, when I'm trying to get consensus from council, are you in agreement with me that we need to put some effort into being prepared to vote on this resolution? Or are you comfortable voting on the resolution as is?
Well, that's the bad thing. It's not fair to you and Jen, because all of us were, me, Kevin, Bob, David, and Pat, we were all here. I don't remember why it was tabled, because I knew how I wanted to vote on that, and, or whatever reason.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So
so-
it's been 2.5 years. and
Right.
It makes sense for us to, let's discuss it.
Oh, yeah, no, I,
Well, Mr.
Ordinance that requires two readings, it's not a resolution.
well, well, we need
Well,
to
would it-
discuss it, because, the way it's worded in here is very confusing to me. It says non-residential districts, yet B.E. Holy is surrounded by houses.
Well, I'm telling y'all, the park is right across from it too now. It's the same thing with and nothing against North Augusta Middle. I'm happy they got a sign. But if we'd have voted that night that we tabled this, it would have failed. So that's what I told Ms. Newsom. I said, you better be glad, buddy, it got tabled, because it would have failed that night.
Have somewhat of the same concern if we do something today.
Right, that's why I said, I think we need to talk about it
more.
more, yeah.
Mr. Paradise, tell me, do you think it would be better addressed with a variance versus a text amendment?
I do. When
So-
you go, that would be my opinion. You're talking about a site-specific issue. Here, the text amendment changes the rules for everybody.
Yeah, I think it would be best.
But here, I think you're talking about, Ms. Pat talks about it being a block from another sign. That is a site-specific issue.
Well, I'd
And
rather,
when you get into site-specific issues, that's why you have variances.
I'd
The other
rather us
thing,
do that.
the other thing in this ordinance is it, right now, the electronic message center is 50% of the freestanding sign. This text amendment would take that away, and it could be 100%.
They want two things.
That's right, there's two things in there. So, just so, and Mr. President, just to be clear, it's a non-residential use in a residential district, would allow the electronic message center.
Right, and that was my big concern
So-
early on, because if we change this, it's not just that area. You can have them in Hammond Hills, you can have them, anywhere where you have mixed use like that. To be fair with you, the Larder and Hammond's Ferry could have one. So, we need to be, I'm more like what David said. This is more of a site-specific thing, because if we open that, then, you could have those in plenty of other
B.E.
neighborhoods.
Holy just wants what's best for B.E. Holy. And I think, again, the variance was not the issue, was not the venue, that was not the direction last time, but if that's the direction now, then that's great. That's where it needs to be, so, talk this out, we'll make a decision next week.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think I need an extra week to think about it. I felt pretty strongly from the get-go on where I was going to vote on this one, but I do think it's fair for you and Jen specifically to have some more time to absorb it, because it is a big change, and I think we can have that debate once it's time. But my preference would be, let's keep it on the table with the intent, and I'll make the motion to remove it off from the table to ensure that it happens, but that we hold it, give the two of you time to absorb it, to think about it. We discuss it over the course of the two ordinances, and then we make a decision and let it go. You know, the point's not to necessarily debate it tonight, it's to decide what to do with it, and I think that's the right path forward.
We're good with that? Okay. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you,
All right, heading on to new business. Item number 7 under Economic Development, ordinance number 2023-01 to authorize the city to enter into a second amendment to the Master Development Agreement of March 5th, 2017 for North Augusta Riverside Village, first reading. So if I can take the council back to last year, we had a 5-year Master Development Agreement originally with Greenstone and other elements for a 5-year time period. Last year, the city council voted to extend that by 1 year, and that this amendment would extend it for 1 more year. This is also the subject of one of our focus items tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in this and move on to the next item, if you'll allow me to do that. And the next item we have is under Engineering and Public Works, ordinance number 2023-02, authorizing a restructuring of personnel for the departments of Streets and Drains subsequent to department vacancies resulting from retirements and resignations. First reading, and again, because this is a structural change in one of our departments, this requires an ordinance, not a resolution. And Mr. Tom Caesar is excited to tell you all about it when he comes on up to the podium.
So yeah, this is actually the title of the ordinance might be a little misleading. It's not really a wholesale restructuring of the Streets and Drains Department. It's basically creating a new position and promotion off budget. And so for the last couple of budget cycles, I have submitted a request for a supervisor position in the Streets and Drains Department. The department is headed by a superintendent, and then there are no other supervisory level personnel below him, and that's that. I was, not only just the workload of the department, but the opportunity for succession within the department has really, we've not really provided that opportunity, and then this year and then last year, our superintendent did resign from that department. Now, while we did promote from within from a foreman level position, it was not an ideal situation, and that individual has a very steep learning curve, and so, it's been working out fine, but so my intent here, and with that resignation and with some other retirements, we had Mr. Kyler who also retired, that just created some I guess I'd call it budget surplus in the department in the personnel line item. Sort of freed up some salaries, and so my request here is to move forward with the creation of the supervisory level position and the promotion from a existing foreman to that supervisory position. But there's no other wholesale changes in the department, how it functions, and otherwise normal business.
So we'll have the superintendent, we'll have this supervisor position, then we'll have a foreman.
Correct.
Okay, just like that. One foreman, then the supervisor, then superintendent. Okay. Any questions for Tom? Thank you, Tom.
All right, moving on to number 9, Public Safety, resolution number 2023-03, resolution authorizing the budget and funding source for the construction of the North Augusta Department of Public Safety headquarters. Again, that's going to be a focus item presentation this evening, so I'd like to go ahead and skip past this, and we'll save that for the focus item. And we'll move to item number 10, under Public Services. I would say number 10 and 11 are in relation to each other for the same project, just different aspects of it. So the first one is resolution number 2023-04, which is the resolution approving a contract for the installation of fire suppression and alarm system in the materials recovery facility. And then right behind that is 2023-05, a resolution approving a contract for the installation of electrical and ventilation systems in the materials recovery facility. Again, as you've gone through the updates, James has shared some pictures of the structural steel going up. as far as the building goes. So we're making great progress, or James is making great progress down there. And so just as we go through the standard bid procedures for both of those actions, that allowed James to be able to pick from the lowest bid to move forward, and that the funding for that will be through the funding that we receive, the insurance money from the South Carolina Insurance and Risk Fund. So those are those two items, again, related, although separate resolutions, but both concerning the MRF. And I'll pause for any questions. Hearing none, I'll move to item number 12, Finance, Resolution number 2023-06, approving the annual assessment report and amendment of the assessment roll for the Ballpark Village Municipal Improvement District and confirming the collection of annual assessments therein for the 2022-2023 assessment year. I would remind the council that this is an annual requirement, and this is something that Linda has prepared for us, and I've asked her to be up here on the stadium or on the podium today just to talk a quick moment about what is here and answer any questions you may have about the mid assessments.
Good evening. This document is prepared in conjunction with a third-party consultant, Thad Wilson with Municap, who's been involved with the Project Jackson from its beginnings. Also, our bond counsel, Pope Flynn, has also reviewed this document and signed off on it, as well as the resolution, and Kelly has received a copy to review prior to bringing it in front of you for your consideration. The mid fee, which was adopted by ordinance in conjunction with borrowing the bonds for Riverside Village, was a portion of the backstop for the tax revenue piece of the financial model. In order for us to add those fees, we have to bring forth a revised assessment to you based on the values of the properties every year. And we will do this every year while this is in place. And these slides will walk you through the calculation and break down the steps that are taken to come up with the amount of the payment or mid fee for each parcel. These steps are taken every year and in the same order. We will start with step one. We calculate our annual revenue requirement first, and that requirement includes our debt payment amount and any other administrative fees that we might have. And those fees can include payments to our mid-consultant, our bond counsel, and any staff time that's allocated to this. So once we calculate all those expenses that we need to cover, that's where we get the little over $2.5 million amount. And you will see that on page 4 in Table A of the document. So that will be our mid requirement for this year. It's okay. The annual assessment comes from our financial model. You can also find this on the Appendix B2 of the document. When we did the mid document, these were the values that the master developer and the city agreed to, that they were going to put these on each parcel. And so that is where that amount is coming from. So we're going to look at this in total in step one, and if we've got to keep going through the steps, we'll look at it per parcel. Now, since our annual revenue requirement is a little over $2.5 million, that is more than our annual assessment. That's a little bit over $1.6 million. So that means we will have to move to step 2. All right, so in step 2, we're going to look at the amount of tax revenue being generated by the district in total and then compare it to our annual assessment. So looking at the annual assessment, which is that $1.6 million figure, and the amount of tax revenue, and that is an estimate. And this estimate is generated when we look at the school district millage, the Aiken County millage, and the city's millage. And we do this estimate based on the amounts provided by Aiken County. So looking at this $1.6 million assessment, and our tax revenues are estimated to generate $1.4 million. So therefore, there's not enough tax revenue to cover the full amount of the assessment. So now we're going to have to look at each parcel individually and see if they have met their portion of the assessment. And if they didn't, then we will assess the mid fee to cover their piece. That takes us to step 3. So now we're going to look at all the parcels piece by piece, and that'll be in Appendix C, and that's on the last page of this document. And it is really the best summary of how all these fees are calculated. It's got all the information there. So when we look at each parcel, it takes that $1.6 million and breaks it down to each parcel based on acreage, the valuation that was established, and the adoption of this. When we look at each piece, if the annual parcel assessment is greater than the parcel credit, then we're going to have to add to the parcel's tax bill. And that's where it goes on there as the mid fee. So we will bill it on the property tax bill, and we'll collect it the same way we do property tax. And if there is any amount that remains unpaid, it will go to the tax sale like any other unpaid parcel. So next, we're going to look at a couple examples I have based on actual numbers from the report. So we're going to look at Tract J, which is the Ironwood Apartments. Looking at their parcel tax revenue, it was estimated to be a little over $737,000. And their annual assessment on that parcel is $351,000. So their tax revenue is more than what their parcel assessment is. So therefore, they will just pay their tax bill as is, and no additional fee or mid will be assessed on that parcel. Okay. All right, and then we'll look at the flip side of that. We will look at Tract K, which is currently undeveloped. That parcel's assessment was $421,000, but it's only generating about $20,000 on that land for tax revenue. So we're going to be adding a little bit over $400,000 to that tax bill. And currently, we've got 6 parcels that will not require a mid fee this year, and 13 that will. And if you adopt this resolution on February 6th, we will then add these mid fees to the Riverside Village parcels, and we will get those out on the 7th. And that is it. Is there any questions?
Really for the council, especially for the newer folks on the council, this is really a group effort, and obviously Linda's carrying the load on this as far as presenting today. But we do have a lot of folks involved in the assessments. We've got our outside counsel, we have outside bond folks that look at this. I know the more experienced members on council have met with those folks previously. And so ultimately, we feel very confident in the math that they do. And in very broad terms for our newer council members, the parcels that are not developed are the parcels you're going to see that are going to generate a mid fee as opposed to taxes. The Crown Plaza, the Ironwood Apartments, those parcels have overperformed, which is good news. And so what we're seeing in a very general kind of way is that those parcels that are built out are doing very well. It's the parcels that are not developed yet are the ones that are getting the mid fees essentially.
And that last column is the one where 13 are listed for $744,281.
Correct.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
All right, moving to item 13, under Public Safety, Resolution number 2023-07, resolution authorizing the City of North Augusta to enter into a contract with the Aiken County Public Defender's Office for the provision of representation of indigent defendant in the municipal court for the City of North Augusta. And Kelly can certainly probably talk this a lot better than I can, but I'll take a very quick stab at it, which is to say that we currently do not have an existing contract with the Public Defender's Office. We had a contract back in, I want to say 2016, that is a 6-month contract, and then we've been kind of going on a month-to-month, if you will. And so ultimately, based on the legal advice we've received, we think we should go forward with a 3-year contract with the Public Defender's Office. This is a service that we have to provide, and so this just allows us to understand fully what our costs are and to have an arrangement in place in writing with the PD's office. I believe Kelly and Public Safety both in agreement on this. But I will defer to Kelly on any other comments.
It basically has worked out well for us. I really don't have the specifics, but I would assume that of particularly the defendants that are involved in jury trials, that 60+% of them are represented by the public defender's office. And, you know, there are some cities that hire their own public defenders. And of course, you can imagine the additional costs and everything involved in that. I think with this, if there are a lot of things, if I could today contract to keep the cost of things the same for the next 3 years, I would consider it a pretty good contract to enter into. So this appears to be working well.
So is this targeted for any particular type of individual with crime, age, or just in general?
Basically, if you're charged with a crime and considered to be indigent, you're entitled to a public defender.
Are there any other questions on that item? If not, I'll move to our final resolution, number 2023-08, under Finance, a resolution authorizing reallocation of a portion of the funding allocation recommendations of the Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee for the disbursement of revenues from the Accommodations Tax Year 2020 to 2021. I'll take a very brief stab at this, but I think Rachel's probably got a much better understanding of some of the projects that are listed here. So within your resolution, you can see there remains a little over $35,000 of unspent funds. And so based on consultation with Rachel and with PRT leadership, they have a number of different projects that are listed here. One of which, if you'll see there at the top, is the prep and wrapping of the activity bus, which I know is one of the requests that we had from council and also from some of our citizens. So that would be handled through this ATAX accommodation along with some others. But Rachel, I'll kick it to you if you have anything else you'd like to add on this item.
In addition to the activity bus, this will allow us to design, produce, and install some new pole flags for downtown, promoting our new tourism website, and really the bulk of the funding will be for improvements to the community center. If you remember, the director of the chamber came a few weeks back and proposed co-location. We have been able to come to agreement on the terms, and so on the March 6th agenda, we'll have a contract for you all to review and approve. And as we all know, there's a number of deferred maintenance that we have at the community center. So now is a better time than ever to make certain improvements to that facility. Again, much of it has been long deferred. Specifically, what we'd look to spend the money on is improving audiovisual. We have a separate grant to improve audiovisual, so we would be leveraging that funding to make it go a little bit farther. Installation of security cameras, renovation of certain spaces within the facility so that they can be better and more maximally utilized, paint, various refreshments, if funding allows, upgrade of the lighting inside. Just so you all know, there's a number of items that the community center had listed to be taken care of with CPST funding. And we've been working along the way to get some of those things done outside of CPST funding, understanding that it might not be available. So this is one example of how we would reallocate ATAX money to knock some of those things off the list.
Rachel, in the past, have we had unspent funding from this, or is this something one of those years that
We've had unspent funding every year.
Okay.
So up until this year, this is our first year that we're requesting new things. Every prior year that's had unspent money, you all reallocated so that we could buy a mobile stage.
Yeah,
and
the
so,
stage.
yep.
Okay,
So it was last year. We finalized all of that. So the stage is on its way. We're hoping later this spring it'll be here. So this year is the first year that we have the unspent. And so this money is all in arrears. So the money that's on the table now to be reallocated is unspent from grants that were issued last calendar year, the money of which was collected the prior calendar year.
Okay, thank you for reminding me. And the great thing about this is Rod Greenway spoke to the Public Power Hour last year about the bus.
We heard him.
So the fact that we're able to do that, that's exciting, so thank y'all. That's good.
And he reminds me and Rick every Sunday at church.
Mr. Mayor, that finishes item 1, which is our agenda review, and I'll move right into department details, and leading us off will be Linda from Finance.
Good evening once again. Our finance update will include Cycle 1 customers have a due date on Friday. Our Cycle 2 customers will experience their disconnect on Wednesday and Thursday of this week. Our 22 tax bills were mailed out Friday. I got confirmation from our mailing service that they went out. That was January 27th that those went out. Our online tax payment system is up and available for use at this time. Our 23 business license renewals also went out Friday on the 27th. And this year we are encouraging our businesses to use our online payment system with that. The local business license renewal center, in partnership with the municipal association, has developed this website for our businesses to go online and renew their business licenses. And that can be located at www.localblrenewal.com. That's all I have.
I got my tax bill today. It's interesting how the Postal Service always delivers that fast. You know, there's no 2-week
Yes.
delay. I mean, mail it Friday, I get it Monday. Interesting. That's
So I
amazing.
guess I need to check my mail later, is what you're saying.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
Next up will be Public Services with James.
Good evening. I'm going to cover the Clay Street Pump Station upgrade, the status on it, but before I begin, I'd like to kind of give a scope of the project for those not familiar with it. The booster station was installed in the mid-'70s. It is one of the critical components to our water distribution system. Its function is primarily to fill up water tanks and boost pressure in our water pipes. It's used for pressure flow and storage tanks and for firefighting. Right now, as of today, AECom has completed the survey on the property, and also 60% of the construction drawings have been completed. We anticipate that construction on site will start mid to late summer with a completion date of next summer of '24. Moving along, right now utilities technicians and staff are in the process of installing a new water main, 6-inch water main between Bradley Drive and Clay Pit Road. Those two water mains right now are dead-end lines where there's just come to a stop with the water flow. There's nothing else connected to it. It doesn't allow the water to circulate through the water system. We got about 1,400 feet to install. They've got about 400 feet in right at this present time. We anticipate the project will be complete within the next 2 weeks and activated. The primary function of the job will be to allow for a circulating water system, more reinforced water distribution pipe system, and increase of residual pressure for fire flow throughout the distribution system, and specifically for the Bradleyville, Belvedere Ridge, and lower end of Crestline subdivision.
James, what really is included in the upgrade for the Clay Street?
The total replacement of of all of the mechanical stuff, the controls, the pumps, motors, will all be in a pre-engineered, fabricated, self-contained building.
Oh, okay.
So it's the only thing that won't be replaced is the storage tank.
Okay. What about around the outside of the property? Will it be addressed any?
Landscaping, yes, sir, we'll take care of that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, James.
Next up, Tommy Paradise from Planning and Development.
And big news is no BZA this month. We didn't receive any applications.
Thank you. Over to Chief Thomas.
Just a couple items from public safety to talk to you about. The CALEA assessment begins next Monday, which is a big step for us. They have opened all our files and looked at our standards and policies. They've got interviews scheduled with subject matter experts from all our different divisions, so those folks will be online with those particular people. And so February 8th is the development of Smart Cop, the software that we put in the budget to be on site, viewing our business practices to build the software. So hopefully we can get those two projects kicked off and in place within a pretty good time frame.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Chief, and this software is movable from the existing public safety to the new company?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And I remind the council, that's the software package you all approved that was using largely CPST2 dollars to go ahead and get a new 911 software in. So with that, followed by Rick Meyer over PRT.
Okay, good evening. Sweet Words, Spring Sports Registration. That sounds really good. Begins on Wednesday, February 1st, and in conjunction with that, we want to invite the residents of the city of North Augusta to begin participating in our PRT master plan. Available Wednesday. If you come in to sign up for Spring Sports, we will have a survey for you to fill out, a written survey. And beginning next week, we'll have an online survey sometime during the week of the 6th, hopefully on the 6th, if we get all the glitches worked out. So get ready. We want your input. Yes.
But we're going to have a actual on-site meeting starting in March.
That's correct. This will be announced as well. March 21st through 23rd will be the time frame for our public. We'll have a schedule where they'll have opportunities to come and give their input in person to us.
You'll get that out to us plenty of time
Yes.
for us to pass it out social media.
Absolutely. We're gonna pound the social media on
Thank you.
those. Yes.
Okay, y'all. Thank you.
PRT Youth Basketball Program has 2 weeks to go, Miss Pat. You got that? And it's the 37th Annual Round Ball Classic that Pat Carpenter will be gunning for another championship, I'm sure. Yes. And lastly, I want to talk about to all our pickleball players, we appreciate their patience. We've been fortunate and blessed to have Grace United Methodist and First Baptist work with us to provide other alternate options for our pickleball players. I've listed days and times on here. Grace United Methodist Tuesday and Thursday mornings, 9:30 to 12:30, no reservations required. And First Baptist Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Tuesday and Thursday, 4 to 6, no reservations required. And reminder, with the end of recreation basketball season, February 11th, we'll have additional options back at Riverview Park Activity Center.
I got one question for you.
Yes, sir.
I know y'all have talked about this, maybe Rachel has, I've just drawn a blank. I saw something maybe Jim had shared about the North Augusta digital campaign. There were 13 proposals submitted. Bids are being reviewed.
Correct.
What exactly? I can't remember what that is.
What, a digital marketing campaign? Rachel, I'm going to give that one to you.
We're seeking expert advice on how to best get the word out of our new tourism website. They will put together content for us to use, vignettes, pictures, who to send it to, when, how, all of the analytics.
Perfect.
We received a grant for that.
That's awesome.
Rick, do you do, for the Peach Jam, do we do any flyers that we give out to people? Maybe that's a good way to...
It certainly will be another way to market the Peach Jam, yes.
I was just going to say, I did a walk around the track at the Activity Center today. I've never seen pickleball played till today. So
You probably not just saw it, you probably heard it, didn't you?
I heard it too. Yeah, but I just thought it was kind of neat, and I know there's a lot of people been asking about that. So once basketball is done, they'll have more courts open.
Yeah, right now they can play 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, no evenings or weekends, but as soon as basketball is finished, rec basketball, they'll have a gym reserved for evenings and weekend play.
Perfect.
It's a very polite sport.
Yeah.
I saw it.
Just to let you know.
I was like, it's like tennis with a ball that doesn't bounce quite as far.
Correct. Mini version of tennis, yes. Yes.
I have a question for you. I don't know if any of you have noticed on Facebook, the Augusta Regional Transportation is doing a survey. You did share it. Is there any way we can share that to the people of North Augusta? Because this has to do with future greenways, development, funding, roads, streets, or whatever.
I think we should tie that in with our master plan, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
On Friday, we did share information about that public input. I know that the city's public information page did, so maybe Randy can share on PRT. It came from Tommy. Tommy was the one that gave me the gentle nudge to post it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last but not least, we'll have Tom Zeser from Department of Public Works and Engineering.
Yeah, I did see it.
So we have kicked off the Bluff Avenue Streetscape project. We had a pre-construction meeting a week before last, and we expect to see clearing activity begin. That'll be the first step in that work. Some clearing of vegetation along the right-of-way, and we expect that to start within the next week. The Knob Cone Sidewalk project, again, we also had a pre-construction meeting, and likewise, we hope to see construction begin within the next 2 weeks on that project. The contractor has a number of material submittals he has to make for satisfy DOT requirements before he can start construction. Waterworks, yes. Yeah, the new bridge for the Greenway Crossing Waterworks in Waterworks Park will arrive on Wednesday. Unfortunately, we don't have a site ready for it to be installed at, but we will stage that bridge at the old Public Works Yard at the corner of Buena Vista and Riverside Boulevard. We do have the site work contract out for bids now. Those bids are due next Thursday, the 9th. And then a late project, the Pole Branch Drainage Project. That's the large project that we received a large NRCS grant with supplemental ARPA funding. The clearing contractor has mobilized on site and will begin hopefully this week, weather permitting. That construction will follow right after.
Thank you, Tom. I have a question for you. On Knob Cone Avenue, where Knob Cone intersects with Pisgah, that wet area in there where you cannot keep asphalt, will that be repaired as part of the sidewalk project or what?
Not entirely. The sidewalk project does include a drainage element to intercept the groundwater that is contributing to that problem at that area. So that will be done under the sidewalk project. And then it's our hope that we can contract for a complete road resurfacing of Knob Cone Avenue from Pisgah to at least Curtis Drive at the conclusion of the sidewalk project.
Thank you.
And J.D. McCauley, who normally covers our HR job openings, is currently covering for us in Edgefield County for their intergovernmental meeting. So this will conclude our second item here, which is department details. And with your permission, we'll move into the focus items.
Good.
All right, so the first focus item we have is the Riverside Village update, and I would like to turn the floor over to Mr. Chris Shane as he comes down. And so ultimately, the purpose of this update and to talk about the Riverside Village status is tied into the Master Development Agreement ordinance, which will be before you for your first vote next week, which is really to put before you an extension of the MDA for 1 year. But we thought it was appropriate for Chris to come down today and give a status update to you and the public about Riverside Village and why he's seeking an MDA extension.
Chris, nice to have you with us. I know you're familiar with this, but if you state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Chris Shane, Greenstone Properties from Atlanta. We've previously been the master developer since the inception of Riverside Village. We bought the original 30 acres. It was a commercial district and have been moving along. We were held up for a period of time, ignoring COVID, ignoring some other things that have taken place. But we had an institutional partner that, as they entered the project, ended up making the decision that they really didn't want to proceed with additional development. And it took us some time to be able to get that group to ultimately exit, to come to an agreement. We were able to do that toward the end of last year, close that out as of the end of last year. So excited to report that we have 100% control of all the undeveloped parcels now moving ahead. Specifically, Parcel G is one that we went ahead as of the date of closing and were able to come away with not only 100% of the ownership, but we're able to get everything paid off with that. And so that parcel we had actually submitted to the city sometime back. I think we even received building permits on that. So the point being that the drawings are far enough along that that's one that we're going to try to proceed immediately with securing financing and being in a position to get that going. Parcel G was the parcel that was opposite where Southbound Barbecue is. It fronts the river. It's adjacent to the amphitheater. So it's a very visible piece that sort of completes the commercial district closest to the river. The initial plan was sort of 3 stories. It had about a 14,000 square foot footprint on the street level that would be retail. So we've envisioned potentially having a restaurant there, potentially having an urban grocery store, potentially having an outfitter that might rent kayaks and sell fly rods, and could be just a terrific use right there with such adjacency to the river. So Parcel G is sort of the first one that we have in our head that we're hopeful to be able to get moving with. And then we're having conversations with 2 additional parcels that would have apartments. There'd be a little bit more retail in addition to Parcel G that would be included. And then what we call Parcels H and I, that are the townhouse parcels, have been a component of that conversation as well. The other important thing to mention to you is that as of the end of the year, our institutional partner, coupled with us, funded all the monies required to pay the 2021 taxes. So those were escrowed with a title company. The county taxes were paid some weeks ago, and we confirmed that. And so as soon as we get the city tax bill, and we'll see how fast the mail is, but as soon as we get that tax bill, those monies are already set aside in escrow with the title company. So anticipate getting those paid quickly, but we're excited not to have to jump through the hoops and create the headaches that we created for you in the past.
That's my first question. You answered my first question before I even asked about the tax payments. Okay, that's good to know. So just so to give people an idea, so Parcel G, but after G, you'd mentioned H and I?
Those are the townhouse parcels.
Okay. And just give people an idea where that would be located.
So it is immediately adjacent to Parcel G. Okay. As you move away from the amphitheater.
Right.
Those 2 parcels actually front the river. So those will be, as best I know, really the only townhouses in the region that'll front on the river.
And originally, those were just going to be regular house.
In the mid document, those were anticipated as being detached,
Right.
single family. And as we've sort of studied the overall plans, we've added density in a number of areas, but that's one of the areas that we increased the units. Right now, the unit count is 29, but that'll vary a little bit on ultimately what the width and exact layout of those townhouses, where that shakes out. But right now, between those two parcels, we're looking at 29 townhouses. And I want to say the mid document had like 12 detached single family.
I know we really enjoyed Brinkley's Chop House. That's been a great new restaurant. The far left, to the left of the cantina, in their space still available?
There is. So
what are you hearing from that?
We've got one last space. We've been dealing with a group on a letter of intent for that space. Jordan and Trotter is our retail group that's been representing us on the retail space there, and we've actually got a conversation with them tomorrow. So that'll be one of the topics as to what that status is.
You don't know. You can't really say what type of genre of venue.
It would be food service. Is where we're headed.
Y'all jump in if you have any questions, by the way.
Chris, I'll ask a question I'm sure everybody watching's wanting to know. How would we see some dirt being turned this coming up year, you think, on G? I mean, I know you got financing all the other stuff, but is it possible?
I'm always more aggressive than I am conservative, but I think absolutely before the year's out. My hope is to move it a good bit quicker than that. And what we're trying to do is to sequence the construction such that we can start that, and then we can pretty much immediately start on other pieces so that we can sort of maximize our overhead and personnel on site.
Chris, just so I can kind of get it out there, because I know we'll be asked this, and I appreciate the things you're sharing. It sounds good. But explain to us so we can just know why do we need to continue this master development agreement for another year with you?
As you know well, there are a number of disparate program elements here. We've got apartments, we've got townhouses, we've got retail space, we've got office space, we've got hotels, we've got a lot of different things going on. Our background is such, notwithstanding some of the issues that we've certainly had, but because of our past involvement, we did sell the baseball team at the end of last year, but have still kept very close relationships there. And so I think we're in a unique position to coordinate with a baseball team. We still have ownership in the hotel. We still have ownership in left field. We still have ownership in a number of the delivered elements. And we've got, as much, priority and desire to complete the village as we can. And I think if anybody else were to step in, not only not having the knowledge of all the pieces, but we own the stadium parking deck. There are just so many pieces that are interrelated, and if the agreement were not renewed and we were not to continue in a role of developing the parcels and we were to sell them to disparate groups, I think it's going to take some significant time to kind of come to grips with those. And there are just so many coordination issues that I think we're in a unique spot to hopefully be able to complete the development, sort of to its full fruition as quickly as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, I have
Yes, sir.
one question for you regarding parking. I know there are two parking garages there plus the Medac. with all this construction of homes, what's your plan for additional parking? Or is there one?
Well, we early on did an overall parking analysis. We built about 600 parking spaces up the hill here, adjacent to the 60,000 square foot office building that we built. As you go down the hill, the hotel parking deck is about 450 spaces. The newest delivered deck, the stadium deck, is about 540 spaces. So between those three decks, we've got about 1,600 parking spaces. We've got 160 surface spaces. We've got 44 spaces under the left field building. Ironwood has got their own nested area that really suffices for their needs. It depends on ultimately what goes on to Parcel C. Parcel C was initially, per the mid document, envisioned to be an office building. I think it was 75 or 80,000 square feet. We increased that prior to COVID, and in a post-COVID environment, office space. There's not been a tremendous need for it, even though we're in a unique position here in North Augusta because of Fort Gordon and people looking for cyber-related space. So that's one that we're going to want to manage. But the size of that building is going to have a big impact. Initially, and I'm getting too detailed on this, but initially the office user utilizes that parking space. They get there 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and they leave at 4:30, 5:30. That dovetails perfectly with an evening baseball game or a Saturday or Sunday baseball game. So that shared use made a lot of sense. If that building transitions into being something a little bit different and probably less dense, the parking requirement is going to go down. So the 1,600 spaces that we've got in the three decks, the surface parking, the existing parking that's already been accommodated, I would tell you we're overparked. But we can sort of do an updated analysis of exactly how we get there. But we got a lot of parking. That stadium parking deck, with the exception of a sold-out baseball game, during the game, I don't think has ever been full otherwise.
Thank you. You answered my question. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
My question is about parking, but not the future, but what we have now. I've had a number of people call me about parking on parcel G and H inappropriately, and is that my mic? So I wanted to see if we could get some kind of commitment or something we can do, because I understand public safety can't really write citations or anything because it's private property. So I was hoping that maybe we can work with you as far as getting some kind of fence up, some kind of rope, or something that we can make. Maybe signage. I'm not sure, Chief, if there's signs up there saying it's private property, then would that allow us to have the ability to tow or write tickets? Okay. So I just have a number of people that complain to me about that because, we have plenty of parking, and I know everybody doesn't want to park a whole block away. They want to be as close as possible. But we've got to try to get the habit of people to move somewhere else. We just need your help with that.
Certainly agreeable to coming up with a temporary solution. We want it to look good like you do. So if we did something like did the 6x6 posts and had them in the ground and were able to string a chain, something like that, something that's good looking, that's they can't really back into and push over easily. Mm-hmm. If it's a 4x4 or something smaller, they can just run over it. But a 6x6, if we'll sink them, we ought to be able to do something like that that'll satisfy that.
Okay, sounds good. I just think we need to make sure we get something going. All right, thank you.
Anything else for Chris? All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'll move to my second focus item. I try to do this justice because I was told that if I don't pitch this well, Clay Swan Schiff's going to hit me with spitballs in the back here, so I'm going to do my best.
We have some meeting.
Next slide, please. So I just wanted to recap for the council where we are with the public safety headquarters. Obviously, this project goes back well before 2021, but these are the kind of most relevant resolutions. So you can see these are the actions that you as a council have taken starting in resolution number 2021-14, which is the rezoning of the Georgia Avenue parcels from general commercial and R14 to public use, and that has started the cascade, if you will, of resolutions. The last resolution that was before this council that was voted on was resolution number 2022-45, which was the selection of Hood Contracting as our CM risk contractor. And now what I have before you inside your council packet is resolution number 2023-03, which is authorizing the budget and funding source for the public safety headquarters, and ideally may be the last resolution for the council to consider as we prepare to start on the public safety headquarters. So next slide, please. So I wanted to highlight for you the site plan, and what we've been doing in this interim between naming Hood as the general contractor and this study session today is really doing the value engineering and analysis for how do we keep the costs, in a reasonable level and still deliver the product that we're trying to deliver. So we have had to value engineer a few things out of the equation. I'll show you exactly what's out and what's in. So one of the things that we're doing as an option, you can look behind on the site plan there, is the connectivity between the rear of the building, between the public safety side and the court side. We'll have the ability to add that back in at a future date if we so choose to and if the budget allows for it. But as we start the project, we're not intending on having a connection point behind the building. However, the distance between the Star of Edgefield's property line and the public safety headquarters is unchanged. So that is, no change there. And then obviously the legacy buildings that were on the corner of Observatory and down Observatory have been removed and greened, and those will be left as green space going forward. Next slide. This is a very fancy rendering of what we had for you here in the pre-value engineering. And because I'm not an architect, I drew on the really cool clock tower there on the front and had the architects do that for us, but that cost a lot of money. So that is coming off of the engineering. Next slide. So this is essentially the design that we have now, and I'll go through some of the other value engineering items, and you'll see that there are some less windows on the left-hand side of the building. We did that as a cost savings measure. The clock tower, the clock face itself has been removed, but the columns, if you will, are still there. And then what you have is a total of 4 gables, if you will, on the front of the building, each at the entrances to the police and the courts, and then the high gables there across the major features. Next slide. So really, as we went through the value engineering proposition, there are some things we kept, there are some things we lost, and there are some things that are options depending on how the budget looks down the line. So the things that we are keeping, which I thought were most important based on the feedback I've gotten from citizens and from council, is we're keeping all 3 entrances. So Georgia Avenue, Observatory, and Butler are all intact. That's going to remain. We're going to maintain the column structure of the building. We're going to maintain the underground stormwater retention ponds. That was actually on the table for removal, but we really fought to keep that in there based on the price point. And lastly, but probably most importantly to Chief, is that we maintain the interior floor plan. And if we had gone through a value engineering drill that involved minimizing the floor plan, that would have taken an additional 3 to 6 months and additional design costs, and I felt like we really needed to execute a plan sooner rather than later. The things that we lost, we're losing the clock tower, we're losing some of the sidewalks between the building and the future memorial. Again, those are things that we may even have the ability to do in-house at some later date. We're losing some of the high-end finishes inside the building itself, and we're also losing the cast stone options, and you're seeing more of a brick column setup as opposed to cast stone, because the cast stone was about I want to say about $1.5 million just for that aspect.
What are some of the high-end finishes?
Just some of the interior things, Councilwoman. So instead of having the Cadillac, it's more of the Chevy. So as far as just how the designs are inside the walls and the ceiling mounts, anywhere we could find some place to make it look good but be cheaper than the original high-end finishes, that's where we made a cost cut there, as opposed to losing floor space. And then things that we're maintaining as options, we're maintaining as an option for secure parking fence. We had to remove the fence. We really would like to see that fence back in. That's not something that the department has now, but we think they're going to need in the future. But that's an option we can add back into the contract. As I showed you in a previous diagram, the rear parking and roadway connection behind the building, that's an item that we might be able to add back in as an option. And lastly, we're putting in 2 elevator shafts and all the associated items with the elevators, but only 1 elevator right now is in the plan. And again, as an option to add the second elevator, but the bones of the elevator would still be available to do so, and we can add that in a later date throughout the project.
And I'm sorry, but having only 1 elevator, is it where citizens with disabilities can get to everything?
Man, most of the citizens are going to be dealing on the ground floor through the courts and records aspect.
So who would be using the elevator?
We have civilian employees that are that need ADA requirements, so we have to have a requirement for an elevator. Next slide. So right to the budget. So essentially you have a more detailed budget there in the resolution, but we're looking at a building cost, which is a little over $21 million. That's a lot higher than the $11.5 million set aside in the capital project sales tax 4, but that's essentially what we have. We've bounced that number across multiple buildings in multiple municipalities. Talked to Columbia County, Georgia, talked to Fayetteville, North Carolina, talked to folks across South Carolina. And so when we start looking at the overall cost of this building, it's in scope of what we're seeing within the public safety buildings going forward. And then the $3.98 million is the JLA and SCN design costs, project fees, and then FF&E, which is also a large bill because that includes courtroom furniture, things that go in the emergency operations center, the IT systems, the screens, and all the things that go along with that, which brings us to a $25 million total project budget, which would all come out of capital project sales tax 4. Next slide. So let me show you what this really means about what's going to happen with capital project sales tax 4. So what I'm showing here in the left column, and those projects are rank ordered based on council vote and also based on the voter referendum for CPSD 4. So the left column there under CPSD budget is what was originally passed in the sales tax referendum, and on the right is what I think we're going to be putting against those projects and also the funding sources. So starting at the top, obviously by going to a $25 million budget on the public safety headquarters, that crowds out a lot of other things on CPSD, although we're trying to do some mitigating effects. The council previously voted to move road reconstruction, specifically the Bluff Avenue project, up to the number 2 item. And so the overall budget for road reconstruction was $3 million. There's a number of different roads listed on there, but based on council action, Bluff Avenue is the one we're going after, and that's a $2.5 million total expense, which doesn't leave a lot more room for other road reconstructions just based on the costs. We have road resurfacing, which we're not going to be doing out of CPST. We may try to get an additional plus up of CTC funding, but that's a maybe, not a definite. We also had item 4, which is New Savannah Bluff Lock and Dam, $500,000 set aside for that. I think based on the fact that we've got the DOE settlement money for $20 million, pretty much invalidates that requirement out of CPST, so I think we're in good shape there. If you go items 5 through 9, which a lot of those are Parks and Recreation related, those are all going to be sacrificed, if you will, although Rachel did bring the possibility of using some ATAX to do community center upgrades in item number 7. Moving down to number 10, we had $3.5 million set aside for wastewater infrastructure improvements. We are still waiting on the RIA action on our grant request, which we should have by the end of March, but if that's successful, that would be a $9 million overall project for wastewater for our 3 interceptor lines, which would actually be greater than the $3.5 million in capital project sales tax 4. We have stormwater improvements. Right now, I listed $600K out of ARPA for one of the projects, although Tom rightfully mentioned the rushing waters project under flowing wells, and so that's an additional cost there. So actually, that 600K is low. It'll be higher than that. So our stormwater allocation will be pretty close to what we had in capital project sales tax. Gateway and wayfinding would be sacrificed. Software and technology will likely be a future ARPA request to council, and we're starting to go through the mechanics of what that will look like. City Hall safety and security improvements would for now not be moving forward. But the finance department lobby improvements, after discussing that project with Linda, we're going to try to use some of the facility improvement money that the council approved last year to get after that, at least for improving the entranceway there, or at least where the customer interface is, almost like bank teller windows, as opposed to redoing the entire lobby. So really what you see before you then is a CPST4 budget of $27.5 million. What was passed and what was forecasted by the county was a little over $30 million. I don't feel comfortable yet, and that's based on projections, but I don't feel comfortable yet giving you a budget that runs it right up to $30 million. Previous capital project sales tax have slightly underperformed, and so ultimately I want to give the council some breathing room, and you all can make future decisions about, as we get towards the end of this project, whether you want to backstop other projects on the CPST4 list. Next slide. So for a timeline, obviously we're here in the study session. Then we have a council vote next week for that resolution on the 6th of February. Everything after that is contingent on a positive council vote, where we would have a groundbreaking ceremony on the 24th of February, and we are well postured to do that. And we would still put up some things like construction fences along that line, but major construction would begin no later than the 1st of May, and that effectively starts the timeline for the building construction itself. And I think as a Christmas present to Chief, I think we could get him in there by December of 2025. Next slide. So really what I'm asking for from the council is approval of resolution 2023-03 next week at the council meeting. And I will take any of your questions.
I'll just say thank you for the presentation. My biggest questions fell to the budget, and you laid that out very clearly, so I just appreciate all the information, and I think we're at the point that we want to continue to get this progress. I know this council's been working on it very hard, so seeing progress is kind of where we're at, so thank you.
Great presentation. The budget is right where I thought it should be originally, knowing what this building costs. Thank y'all. Thank all the staff members, all of you who worked on this project.
Jim, is that final number locked in? We've awarded the bid, and I mean, they cannot exceed that 21 point whatever million, correct?
Not without change orders that would be approved by me, and ultimately, for major items, I'd want to come back to council. But I think the whole point of the CM at risk contract is that the contractor's at risk, and they have to hold to that number. So if we go with the design drawings that we have and the product that we're asking for, that is the price of the building.
Okay, because I just know every day materials, labor, everything's going up. So just
Yes, sir.
This is a 2.5-year project. Don't want them to come along a year after it and say, oh, well, we're going to need more money.
I feel very comfortable with the GMP. Where I feel less comfortable is the FF&E. So if a year or a year and a half from now we're trying to buy IT items or trying to buy big screens or whatever else is needed for the aspects of the building, those prices may rise, and I may have to come back and have a discussion with the council about it. But I'm feeling confident in the GMP.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Subject to yours or any council questions, that's all the staff presentations for tonight.
Okay, great. All right, so we're closing. I'm just, Pat, you want to give a little throw out for Miracle Field? Want to promote that?
Well, we met last week, the committee, about our Miracle League field, which we're still leaning toward the San Salvador side. Right now, on hand, in the bank, we have $850,000. Of course, the field is $2.2 million, if things don't change. So what we're thinking about doing is maybe doing it in phases, do the turf on the whole entire field. That'll help the city as well. Also, if there's a little money left, we can maybe have some open dugouts, and Rick, you might, that, you know, the wheelchairs and all could get in. And then, of course, we would stripe the field, make it look like a ball field. And then as we move forward, we could add like the concession stand or what is it, Rick? Yeah, pavilion, that's what, pavilion. And of course, we're working with some people, hopefully with our scoreboard, that we might get an organization to come in and say, we'll do your digital scoreboard for you. So I'm excited, but yet I want the whole thing done, boom. But right now, the way it's looking, we might, unless there's anyone out in North Augusta who would like to donate money.
You got a big, tell me about, there's a big concert coming up.
That's right. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes. Well, you can tell about the concert. All right, but it's going to be March, and I'm sorry, 8th or 25th. I'm sorry. My mind is on the ball field. Okay.
You'll
but
be
we're having
seeing
a big.
that. I'll be posting it.
Yeah, yeah. You can talk about that.
Fundraiser with Ryan Abel will be singing. It's going to be incredible at the amphitheater, but it'll be a great opportunity to support people. You can buy tables, you can buy tickets. So anyway, okay. A couple things I was just going to say is, if you have not read the article that Elizabeth wrote about the Greenway in the Star, you did a good job, young lady. Very, very good article. Our own Bob Brooks gave a lot of history about the Greenway and how it started. So I would suggest you to read that if you haven't. This time I told Chief Thomas after I went to the Christmas get together at Public Safety, we're going to start doing more of this. Our own Lieutenant Harris was awarded the Medal of Valor for his action by Aiken County Sheriff's Office. This was a situation last year where a suspect had threatened a woman at gunpoint, and because of Lieutenant Harris and some other folks with Aiken County Sheriff, they were able to get that lady out without any harm. And they're just these kinds of things. Our public safety guys are doing this all the time, big things, little things, and our citizens need to understand that. So we're going to promote this as often as we can. So thank you, Lieutenant Harris, for what you're doing. So I'm going to shout out for him. And then this is going to be great. Next Monday, we're going to do a proclamation for Ambassador Theodore Britton. He was born in North Augusta in 1925. He was given the Congressional Gold Medal. He was in the Montfort Point Marines, which was the all-black Marine Corps in World War II. He was appointed that gold medal by President Obama. He was ambassador appointed by Gerald Ford, but just he's won a lot of things. But anyway, he's going to be here for our proclamation, so it's going to be a great opportunity for citizens. I don't think and why we're doing this is he was given the Order of the Palmetto by Governor McMaster. That is the highest civilian honor any citizen in South Carolina can get by the governor. He will be the first North Augusta resident that we know of, that I've heard, has ever been given that Order of the Palmetto. So this is
Randy Coopers gave it.
Okay. Okay. The first African American about it. So anyway, but again, a really big deal for what he's done internationally. So I just tell, if you want to come, I hope you'll come, because it'll be a great opportunity to meet the ambassador. So with that, that's all I got. We stand adjourned. Thank you.